Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing my first wrap-up of 2020. The majority of these books were read during the Owl's Magical Readathon, which I have kind of vlogish videos. If you guys want to check them out, I will leave them in the description below. I've also finished my Goodreads reading goal, which wasn't that surprising. I only wanted to read 10 books, mainly because I wanted to focus on writing this year, and so far I have done very little writing, because after the Owl's Magical Readathon I got into reading fan fiction, which was a rabbit hole I shouldn't have fell down. So trying to get my life back on track there. At least I started the year off strong with a bunch of reading. Starting with the first 3 books I read before the Owl's Magical Readathon, I have Cinder, Scarlet, and Cress. Now this was a series that I was excited to go into, but at the same time, knowing they were fairy tale retellings, they weren't like high on my priority list. I actually can't remember. They were just, the reason I picked up this series is because it and finishing the Illuminae trilogy is pretty much like the main series that I wanted to finish, or start, I guess, because people, everyone has read these books, it seems. So I feel like I was really missing something, so I decided to just pick the books up first thing of the new year, and I don't regret it. I really don't. Cinder is supposed to be Cinderella retelling, Scarlet is Little Red Riding Hood, Cress is Rapunzel, and Winter is Snow White. Now, to start things off, Cinder was my favorite book of the series. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. Scarlet got a 3.5. Cress got a 3 stars, and then Winter also got a 3.5 stars. I read the majority of Winter before the Owl's Magical Readathon. I think I left 200 pages for the readathon, and which I didn't feel bad about, because even though this book looks like it's decently sized, it's over 800 pages, and I knew I was not reading that all in the readathon. I actually didn't count the number of pages I read during the readathon. I have them written down. Actually, did I? I think I may have written them down because I kept a tracker for that. Let's see. Did I actually end up totaling those? I did. But we'll get back to that when I want to talk about the Owl's Magical Readathon. Anyways, Cinder was my favorite. I love Cinder and Kai being together, and it doesn't really help matters none that the prince and my dog share the same name. So I was listening to the audiobooks while I was on the treadmill, and my Kai was out there with me, and it was very confusing because he thought that someone was calling his name every single time, and it was just, you were such an adorable little fuzzball. I love you, but please stop trying to get on the treadmill with me. So it was kind of awkward. I think in one of my vlogs I'm actually on the treadmill and you can see Kai walking past. I really don't have many bad things to say about it. I will say that this doesn't feel like a Cinderella retelling to me. It seems more like a Sailor Moon retelling to me, what with the princess from the moon and the Prince of Earth, and the fact that it takes place in China. If it took place in Japan, it would be more correct, but since it's China, it's kind of, it's not the same thing, but it's closer to Sailor Moon than it is Cinderella. In terms of, actually, where does Cinderella take place? I'm not 100% sure now that I'm thinking about that. Anyways, this just, it ties a lot of things in with Sailor Moon, where there's just a lot of aspects from Cinderella that I couldn't even attempt to connect with this book, and that could be more because I really don't care for the Cinderella fairy tale, and I watched Sailor Moon as a child, and it was imprinted on my brain that it was such a good series. And I mean, even though I didn't finish it, I didn't finish the last season, I don't regret it either, because this was also my favorite relationship, I think, out of all of them. Although Scarlet's story, I wanted so much from this story that I just did not get. No, I got the ratings backwards. This was a 3 stars, Cress was a 3.5 stars, because for the life of me, this relationship I wanted to happen so much, and the beginning of it was really good. I loved it. I loved how they were meeting each other, how everything was progressing. But like as soon as that first kiss happened, I was like, why? Why in this moment of time is this happening? It's just, this relationship could have happened at a slower and more progressive rate, and I would have been so much happier. I understand, because of everything that happened in Cress, that this relationship had to like go full throttle, but the book needed to be probably it needed to either be a lot longer, or the pacing needed to be slower, just to make it feel like they were actually cementing the relationship, I guess, because it just felt like they fell into this relationship and that was just where it was going to go. And in all honesty, it's my least favorite book of the quartet, but at the same time, I really enjoyed all the books, so even though it was my least favorite, it was still good. Cress, on the other hand, it took me like a literal month and a half to actually force myself to finish this book, and I think that was because I listened to the audiobook for all these books and I just didn't feel like listening to the audiobook. Was because of everything that was happening with Scarlet and Wolf. That where Scarlet was at the point of this book, especially like the first, actually all of this book is where that's where she was. Never mind, but for the parts that were for her, I really just wanted out of this situation with every fiber of my being. I did not want the things that were happening to happen. So I think that had quite a bit to do with why it took me so long to read the book. Not because it was bad, not because I wasn't enjoying it, but simply because what was happening, I didn't want to be happening. Also, there was way too much drama happening in this book. Way too much relationship drama when there was no established relationship. I like the fact that, you know, Cress tried to see the best in Thorn. I like the fact that Thorn wasn't letting her be delusional with all of this, and that he was honestly trying to be a good guy throughout all of this, even with all of the hardships he was having to face. It was also just, it was way too much miscommunication, or should I say delusions? I feel like Cress was just hoping for the best of her Prince Charming after she was like literally isolated for a good portion of her life, so she was just waiting to be saved, and Thorn is what she got, and she was expecting so much from Thorn. But moving on, I took way too much time in talking about the first 3 books. Next up is Winter. This book I read for the astronomy challenge, and I guess I wouldn't really put it as astronomy because I only read the last 200 pages, but I still counted it since it wasn't a required class. Yeah, this, if you guys haven't seen, is what I made in my reading journal for this readathon. I absolutely love everything that G has done for this readathon, and I wanted to track every little aspect. As you can see, there's a lot here that's not filled out because I didn't get to finish those books. I was lucky I was lucky that I finished all of my required reading for the career of Trader of Magical Tomes. So when the Newts readathon happens, which I do plan on taking part in, whether I vlog that or not is a totally different matter. If it's anything like what's been going on the last few months with the coronavirus, I more than likely will not vlog, just because it's going to be the same thing day in and day out with no real change. I only have to like technically read 3 books, but I also plan on doing the Animagus training, which I finished the reading for that as well. So I'm not sure if that's going to be the same amount of reading I need to do for the same classes. Actually, no, it says right here. Yeah, I still have to do the same classes. I just have to get a certain grade in them. That's going to be interesting. I don't know how the grade system is going to work because I haven't really looked into that. I've watched like maybe 1 or 2 vlogs of it. So I'm kind of going in blind, and I feel like I'm going to have to read so many books, but oh well, I will make it work. The only thing I really can say about this book is that I'm glad that it kind of went in the direction of the Grimm fairy tales Snow White instead of the Disney Snow White. I don't remember like all of the original Snow White fairy tale from the Grimm fairy tales, so I can't like really say in detail what connections this was with it, but I do remember there being a hint at mental illness and also a hint at rape, I believe, from that fairy tale. One of the fairy tales had rape, and I was pretty sure it was Snow White, but I may be wrong. If you guys know, please correct me, because that's something that I don't want to be, like, misinforming people about. But I'm pretty sure I'm right about the mental health issue, just because of everything the Winter is going through throughout this book. And I have to say, Winter is such a strong person to be willingly subjecting herself to this kind of torture. And it is definitely torture. It's also one of the few ways that she can take control of herself because of everything that happens with her stepmother, who is just a god-awful woman. But yeah, while the relationship in this was kind of rocky just from the get-go, because I didn't really see how it would work out in the end, but I'm not going to spoil that because it kind of does work out, even though you don't really get to see it working out. I wanted to see so much from this relationship that just we did not get to see, because everything is resolved after the ending of this story. We still don't get to see it in the novella bind-ups of Stars Above, which I read as well, but at least we kind of get a hint at things are going in the right direction. Speaking of Stars Above, I read this book for Potions, which was to read a really short book, basically anywhere, I think it was like less than 100 pages. Let me just check on that. Oh, it was less than 150 pages. I read one novella for that challenge, but I ended up reading the entire book. The main stories I would take away from this are the last one that had Scarlet and Wolf's wedding, which I really enjoyed, and then my favorite novella of it was actually called The Little Android, which was a Little Mermaid retelling. That story broke my heart. I wish it was so much longer. I wish it had gotten a full-length book, but I also, there's only so many things you could have done with that storyline to make it longer. So I really enjoyed it. It was kind of the perfect length for what she did with the story. But at the same time, I wanted more, because The Little Mermaid, besides Mulan, it's just like my favorite Disney movie. And I wanted so much from it. Again, I think these books more coincide with the Grimm fairy tales than the Disney version. But at the same time, The Little Mermaid, she's a mermaid. I want more. Okay, Darius the Great Is Not Okay was probably my least favorite book that I read for the Owls Readathon, and this got a 2 stars. My main issue with the book is that I had to look up so many Persian words and terms, and it was, in all honesty, it's not a bad thing to have in your book, because it like immerses you in the culture, but either have a dictionary in the book so the person doesn't have to go online and look up multiple words in a different language, or simply just cut out the words in the different language, because seriously, I had to look up so much, and I hated having to stop every 2 seconds to look up a word. It was the most aggravating thing. I also expected this book to be more on the not the cutesy side, but the more resolving issues side, and it felt like all of the issues got resolved like at the very end. And I mean, there was a few ups and downs with the characters throughout there, but it's like the majority of when things started to get okay is like towards the end, when everything was just, you know, okay for the characters, was just at the end when everything was getting squished together in this small amount of time. It was also frustrating that the main character, he had a connection to this other boy from Iran, and it was kind of a not forced friendship, but I don't know how to describe it, because while I really liked the friendship, it seemed like there was going to be more. It felt like it was hinting at something more the entire time, and it felt like that the character, our main character, was having like kind of a sexual awakening, but nobody was party to it, even him. I mean, maybe I was reading too much into it, but it seems like there could be a lot more that happens after he gets back home. Maybe he, I don't know, becomes more at peace with himself, or becomes more comfortable in his own body. which would be something nice to actually see since he deals with depression. I mean, that's the one thing I can say that was really good about this book, and one of the reasons that I didn't give it below 2 stars is because I felt like there was a really good representation for depression in this book, and that's only me speaking from like the one serious episode of depression that I had. I was lucky enough that I was able to deal with it until I could actually make myself get out of bed and go to a doctor to get help. I mean, that's the first thing I did. I dealt with a really bad depressive episode for like a week before I could finally force myself to get up and do anything. And it was just, I was in a really bad headspace at the time. I'm not conveying how bad it was very well, but it was horrifying, and it's something that, you know, you can't even imagine it until you've experienced it. And anyone who goes through depression and actually is able to continue living their daily lives is one of the strongest people out there. I've only had to deal with one episode. I never want to deal with it again. And somebody who has to deal with this on a daily basis, like the father and son in this, just strong people. The dad, I hated the dad in this because of how he handled his son's depression when he himself has depression, especially since the biggest pet peeve with him was a weight issue, and the weight issue was caused by the medicine. I have had that same problem with depression medicine, so I know how the son feels by having his body like be judged by family and friends. And it's sad when it was being judged by the father, when the father is, I think he's on the same medication actually. So I really hated the father in this. From my personal experience, I think it had a good representation of depression. So if you guys are looking for a book like that, I would recommend this. I also read this book for the challenge of arithmancy, which I can't remember what that challenge was. Oh yeah, read a book outside your favorite genre. My least favorite genre is contemporary, so that's what I went with. I need to get some contemporary books off my shelf anyways. The next book that I tried to read for Ancient Ruins, which was to read a book that starts with an H, I think, right? Starts with an H. Oh, it has a heart on the cover or in the title. So I decided to pick up Heartless, and actually now that I think about it, I didn't finish this challenge. I'm just going to say that I finished that challenge by reading the 93 pages of Heartless and then proceeding to read Hanger, which starts with an H, which is what I thought the challenge was. Is there a heart on this cover? They have hearts inside them. Does that count? I think that's kind of cheaty, but oh, there's a heart right there where it says 16 or Boys Love. I'm counting it. But I read 93 pages of this via audiobook. I listened to it at like double speed just to get that far into this. I read 3 hours of this book in a day. Like, actually, I think I read 3 hours of this book within like an hour and a half. If even that. Just because I wasn't enjoying it, to be honest. Mainly because it's a retelling of the Red Queen from Alice in Wonderland. So, you know, she turns into this heartless bee that has this short, really overly energetic older husband. And the husband in Alice in Wonderland was dead. Which I don't know if he is or not in any other kind of fairy tale. I've only watched like 2 or 3 different movie variants of Alice in Wonderland, and I enjoyed none of them. I read Alice in Wonderland once, and that was years and years ago, and I didn't enjoy it, so I'm not an Alice in Wonderland fan. And this book just drove home the fact that I am not really into them. And I did not DNF this book. This is like a set off to the side to read later book. Everything that's happened was annoying and confusing and weird, which Alice in Wonderland is weird, so I guess I kind of hit the nail on the head with that one. But I don't know. I will recommend that if you decide to read this book, to listen to the audiobook. I listened to the audiobook for the Lunar Chronicles and this book, and they were all done by Rebecca Soler. I think that's her name. She is fantastic. I'm going to look into other books that she's narrated for and listen to them because, you know, if I have them and if I'm interested in them. because she does such a wonderful job with all of the characters and giving them all their own voices and bringing them to life, and I love it. I love it. She's so good. Hanger, on the other hand, which I read in place of the challenge that we're gonna say counts as a challenge, is a very confusing manga series that I picked up the first volume in because it was a BL novel, to be honest. I picked it up because it's yaoi. Boy, is it yaoi. If you guys don't like yaoi, do not pick up this book because there's sex in it in the first volume. Also, if you're 16 years of age or under, well, I guess you can be 16. Under 16, do not read this book. Don't. Keep your innocent eyes innocent. Anyways, the main premise of this book is there are these hangers, which I can't remember off the top of my head now because it's been a month, if the hangers are the people that are being controlled because they're drug addicting criminals or the controllers of them. I think they're the druggies, to be honest. This frickin' manga series had me so confused from the summary on the back, and I confused myself trying to summarize this book actually. But you have these people in charge, they're kind of like the police. This guy, I don't know if I'd call him the police or not, but he has a good sense of justice. They control these criminals who have been affected by this drug. They've overdosed on it to the point where they have like supernatural abilities and powers, and they're very dangerous to society. So they're being controlled by these little cufflink things that kind of attach them to the cop that is in charge of them. And they basically are whittling down their *5 life sentence by catching other criminals like them. Like seriously, the main character of this, the main hanger drug addict character of this guy right here, he has a life sentence of 500 plus years, and apparently this drug also helps them live longer, or maybe not. It's kind of alluded to with one of the female characters that she can't die. So I'm not sure if it's just something special to her or if it's all of them, because all of them seem to have like a certain quirk where their powers become too much and they have to release it, or no, they use too much and their way of releasing it is through different means. Like the main character's hanger, he has to eat. He eats like a lot, like he'll eat you out of house and home. He'll eat 5 times the amount a normal person will eat, kind of quirk. And then the other main characters, or side characters that are on the back here, sex is his way of dealing with his little, I guess, energy drain. I don't know what you would call it, because I'm only in the first volume. I do plan on continuing this. As confusing as it was, I am very intrigued to learn more, so I'm definitely going to be picking this, the rest of the series up. I think there's only 3 volumes released at this point in time, and I'm not sure how long it's going to be. I'm hoping it's a really long series. I mean, like at least like 12 volumes, because there was a lot that happened in this, strangely enough. But this I ended up giving a 3 stars. The next book I read was a reread, and it's Missions of Love. This, I don't think was actually, it was for, what challenge was this for? This was for herbology, and it was not a required class, but I chose a manga for it, and I was in kind of like a little go-between on what books I'm going to read, so I just decided to pick it up. But Missions of Love was a reread. I've read the first 12 volumes of this manga, and I don't recall how many volumes are out right now, but I do want to continue reading it, so I thought I'd reread the first volume, reintroduce myself to the world and the characters. Cell phone novelist Yukina Himuro has decided that in order to satisfy her fans' demand for love stories, she must experience romance firsthand. But with her icy reputation, how can she find someone willing to play the part of boyfriend? By blackmailing the most popular boy in school, of course, which leads to so many more issues than there should be. There are so many different ways you could go about getting someone to help you than blackmailing them, like asking nicely. There's also the fact that her best friend is also like crushing on her pretty hardcore, and as soon as she starts blackmailing this most popular boy in school, not only does he try to get back at her several times, which I do not blame him for, but he, not by any like being physically mean to her, but by trying to get, let's put it this way, he doesn't hurt her in any physical way, but he does try to get like the girls to turn against her, and he tries to make her as uncomfortable as possible, and he also tries to find blackmail material on her, that way he can get out of being blackmailed himself, which again I can understand. But anyways, her blackmailing this guy causes her best friend, who has a crush on her, to get very protective and angry, and it's just, and he's a very like introverted person, so it's kind of weird to see that, but at the same time, I don't know, it's a love triangle that doesn't bother me as much as I expected it to. I mean, in all honesty, if all three of them just decide to be in a relationship, I would be fine with that. Towards, you know, with all romance manga, it's going to get better in the end, and they're going to become friends, and happy, happy, joy, joy time. Probably not in this series, but you know what I mean. What really drew me to this series to begin with was the cell phone novelist angle, which is something I don't know if it actually exists or not, but I just love the idea of her like writing a novel via cell phone and just becoming insanely popular for it. Something else I really like about this is the art style. It's very flowery and whimsical looking at times, but I don't know. I mean, there's not a lot. You could go panels and panels without seeing much detail in the background. There's a very main focus on the characters, which I didn't think I would like as much as I thought I would, but the art style for these characters is so well done that I really, really enjoy it. Although now that I'm flipping through and seeing the lack of background in all these, it does kind of annoy me, but not enough that I'm going to lower my rating of like, I think give this like a 3.5 stars. The only other really, really annoying thing is the fact that this girl has a complex because of something happened to her past that I'm not going to divulge, but she wears glasses to hide her eyes. It's mainly her intense look. Like, she'll just stare at people, and it's like, obviously if you're going to stare at someone, they're going to find you creepy and not want to be near you. I don't think it really had anything to do with her eyes. Not really. But she has a complex about that now. And she wears these glasses that you can't even really tell are on her face to hide her eyes from people. And it's like, I could see if they were these big, square, chunky looking things that actually hid your eyes. It's just so stupid. Because these glasses don't cover her eyes at all. But she wears them as a shield. Like, no one can see her eyes. Like, she doesn't look creepy with or without them. And it's like, no. You look the same with or without your glasses on. You just have, like, a different shift in your personality because you're using them as, like, a physical barrier. Or at least she thinks so. And once they're taken off, she becomes very docile and shy, and it really doesn't make any sense because the glasses don't hide anything, hun. Next up, Haiku, which I read for Charms. What was Charms? It was read a book with a white cover. This is white enough. I don't have like a lot of books with a white cover. Like, this is a series that I've been slowly reading. So, and I've already watched the anime series, so I know exactly what's going to happen. Except season 4. I have not seen season 4. So please do not spoil me in the comments for that, because that would suck so bad. I'm waiting until the entirety of season 4 is done to watch it. So part 1, part 2, don't talk about it at all. Part 2 hasn't actually started yet, but don't talk about it. Anyways, moving on from that. Haiku is like one of my favorite manga / anime series. I obviously haven't got far into the manga, but I've loved every single volume so far. Gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. And I think like one of my least favorite things about this series as a whole is the art style. It's just really not my favorite. I mean, it's an art style that I like at certain aspects, and then there are others that, like certain expressions or moments that I'm not really into. The author of this manga series really likes horror, and I will say that when she hints at, or not hints, when she puts like facial expressions that could be in a horror novel. I absolutely love them. The circumstances for them and just the way they look, which I don't think there's actually any in this volume. I really, really enjoy them. But there are other moments kind of make me like shake my head. Like, actually anything with Asashi in it, just because of his looks. I can't. But I don't know. It's not an art style that I'm particular to. Still good art style. This one, for example. It's one of those moments where the art style alone makes me laugh out loud at it. But I think the main draw for this series has always been the fact that I love the sport. I played in high school. And the characters. Fantastic. I really love the characters so much. I think Kageyama and Hinata are like my ultimate favorites. But I also like Tsukishima. And then Kuro, Bokoto, Asashi. And it's just, all of them are great. Suga is also good. He's the mom of the team, and some of his derp faces, like, towards the beginning, is just amazing. And I know there's a lot more derp faces to come, and just can't wait to see them in the manga. On to the next book, Wayward Sun. I gave this book a 2 out of 5 stars. I gave Carry On a 1 out of 5 stars, so it was an improvement. I did like this. But like Carry On, well, actually, reading this book, I remembered that from Carry On, I hated the magic system. This is supposed to be a Harry Potter retelling, focusing on a relationship between Draco and Harry. Well, I guess I shouldn't say retelling, I should say fan fiction. It's technically a fan fiction of these two falling in love under the different names of Simon and Baz. And instead of Hogwarts, it's Wartford or whatever it's called. And all of that I could look past. I could even look past, like, the fact that this relationship, we didn't get to see the majority of the progression for it, because Carry On was like it was like all 7 years like condensed into like a few hundred pages, which just did not work well. But the magic system for this world is horrifying in my opinion. I can get how it would work. I honestly can understand why this magic system works the way it does. But at the same time, it's such a stupid concept that I can't. I also felt like with all the relationship problems that these two were having, avoidance of the issue was one of the stupidest things these two could have done. From everything that I remember of Carry On, with the history that these two have, they should know that they need to sit down and talk about this, or they just need to break up. Not drag it out and just create more tension. I didn't really feel the tension. I just felt annoyed with these two the entire time. It's just like, talk about it or break up and never see each other again. And there's a third book. So I am going to read it. I am going to see how it all goes together, because I want to see how these two make or break it. I hope, for the love of everything, that it's more relationship focused instead of drama focused like the first two freaking books were. Otherwise, I don't like Penelope, and what she got towards the beginning of the book with her boyfriend, she 100% deserved, and I loved that part. It's my favorite part. I don't like her at all. I don't recall ever liking any of the girl characters in Carry On, and this just reaffirmed that I don't like them in this one either. Oh, but yeah, this was read for History of Magic, which was, a book with witches or wizards. So this was on my TBR. I needed to read it, and off the top of my head, I couldn't think of any witch and wizard books that weren't part of like a huge series. And finally, the last book that I read for the Owl's Magic Readathon was Wolf by Wolf. I know I haven't said any of the authors' names for this wrap-up, but let's pretend that I did and move on. So I read this book for Transfiguration. It was to read a book with that includes shapeshifting. This book has a very unique concept. It takes place in 1956 Germany. Not all of it takes place in Germany. They're also like in Japan through a good part of it as well. We have this girl called, I always say the name wrong. This was something that I touched on in my vlog videos as well. But I imagine her name is Yeehall, and I live in Kentucky. So the first thing that came to mind was Yeehall. And it's just, I couldn't stop thinking of her name like that the entire time. So I eventually just had to block her name out completely. Like, whenever her name came up, I just wouldn't even think of the name. I would just see it, know that we're talking about her, and pass it. I wouldn't even try to pronounce it in my head. It's just, it got to the point where it was really, really bad. I know it kind of shows you how to pronounce her name at the beginning, and that's where I got the E-Hall thing from. I don't know. It was just, I honestly can't stop laughing at myself for it because it's stinking ridiculous. Whatever her name is, she grew up in a death camp. I'm not sure off the top of my head how long she spent in the death camp because it's been a little bit since I've read any of these books. I would say around about a month. But yeah, she is used as a science experiment in this death camp, and it's there that she gains the power to shapeshift. And she uses this ability to join the resistance and taking the place of one of the racers for the third rights. And I'm pretty sure I said that wrong. I apologize for that. She takes Adele Wolf's place in this race as the only female representative, at least at that point in time there is another female into it, but she's not very prominent. She's never gotten close to Hitler like Adele Wolf has. She's the only one that apparently has gotten close to Hitler, or so we think. Anyway, she takes her place, and her main objective is to win. That way she can assassinate Hitler. And I thought throughout this entire book, with everything going on with Felix and the other dude's name that I can't remember at this point in time, that I'm gonna have to look back up. But anyways, there was a love triangle feel with these three, even though technically Felix is Adele's brother and he thinks the Yeehall's his sister, and it's a lot of complicated things, but I really hope those two get together. Like, especially considering like everything should be revealed like at the end of this book or for the next book. Even though Felix was technically unconscious, he should still learn the truth. And then the other guy whose name I can't really remember, he's another competitor that is out for his own good in this, but he does have feelings for Adele and does try to help her, at least so she doesn't die through everything that is going on. So he's a good guy, but at the same time he's kind of giddy. And I can only say this from Yeehall's perspective of him, not really like how, because his feelings are for Adele, not for Yeehall. Well, that makes all of this so awkward. She's technically playing as a different girl, and there's a lot of like blanks in the past between her and these other two characters that she doesn't know about. So it's kind of difficult for me to ship her with either of these boys because they don't know who she really is. They don't know that they're getting to know Adele as a separate person. They still think this is Adele who they're learning these new things about when it's another person. They're liking these aspects of Adele when it's not really Adele. So, like, if Felix wasn't her brother, like, they'd be falling in love with Adele when it's not Adele. Like, it's like you can say that looks don't matter, but kind of hard to picture her with anyone considering the fact that no one knows it's her. Like, technically they're falling in love with her personality-wise, but at the same time, you know, and I'm just throwing that up in the air. The one boy, he kind of confesses about loving Adele, but there was several instances in time where things were different that he liked more. When it was Yeehall as Adele instead of Adele as Adele. This is confusing. And then there's Felix, brother and sister. So it kind of feels wrong to ship them together regardless of whether he falls in love with Yeehall or not. But hopefully, considering the frickin' second book is so long, it'll work its way in. Let's hope it does, because I really want them to be good together. You know, I didn't plan on talking about this at all. I plan on like touching on the fact that it was kind of a love triangle and it was kind of confusing and kind of wrong. I didn't expect to go onto a tangent. I'm gonna have to cut a lot of this out. But I will say too that this book, it gripped me enough. I mean, I will say this, it's not the action-packed book that I expected. It's kind of dull in a couple of spots, but the pacing of this book is surprisingly quick. And I wasn't even like halfway through this book, and I went on the book outlet and I ordered the second book. which is a hunkin book. It's probably like at least double the size of this one. So I should have already started it, but fan fiction. So, but that does says a lot that I wasn't even halfway through this book when I had no intentions of reading the second book, and I just turn around and just buy it so I can like start it right after I finish this one, which didn't happen. This book got a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I can't wait to read Blood for Blood, and I do plan on reading that as my next book. It's just, it may be a little bit before I get to it. Okay, so I read, how many books did I read? Like for the Owls Readathon. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I read 8 books, and of those 8 books, this is like my little daily reading chart. As you can see, I didn't read a few of those days. But I ended up reading a total of 2,098 pages, which I think is a great accomplishment. But yeah, this video has been going on way too long. I can tell you guys right now that I am currently at like 50 minutes of recording, so this has been a long video. That's all of the books that I've read so far in 2020. I had to think of what year was there for a second. But yeah, this is actually a lot more reading than I expected to do so far this year. I finished my Goodreads reading challenge. I have read so many books already this year, and it's just, it feels nice and I feel accomplished because this means all of these books, well, except for Missions of Love, was on my TBR. And these are books off my TBR. None of these were rereads. And it feels good. I will say though, I don't plan on leaving my wrap-ups largely spaced like I did last year and like I have so far this year. I'm pretty sure that unless I get started into a very large series, I'm going to make a wrap-up video for probably every 4 books that I read, because I spend way too much time talking about these books when I sit down. I sit down with you guys and I just word vomit in front of the camera, because when I'm thinking about these books, I have like a list of points that I want to make. They're very short, concise points that shouldn't take more than a few minutes a piece, and I end up tripling that amount of time word vomiting in front of the camera. So yeah, I'm gonna try to make these videos a lot shorter and not as spaced out with like a small amount of books. Here's hoping that I actually stick to that. And thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!